Hello and welcome to those of you who are new. I'm Bridget Paddock, and along with Wendy Tyree, we are in charge of and have started this project called Montana Writing Online Professional Learning Network. And this week we are talking about two of the English Journal articles. Hi, Kurt. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves right now, because I know you might have some people. Wendy, you go first.
Sure. I'm Wendy Tyree, as Bridget just said, and I'm sorry that I missed last week, so I am happy to be back with all of you, and I'm looking forward to talking about these articles.
I'm Christy Mock-Stutz. I work with at OPI. I'm happy to help provide this online meeting room space for this professional learning network of teachers. I will pass on to Tammy now. Oh, Tammy, can anyone hear Tammy? No, Tammy, we're not hearing you. We can see you talking. We can see you introducing yourself.
Okay, now I can make noise, but I can also fake everyone out. Okay, I'm really here. Anyway, I'm Tammy, and I'm really happy to be here. I got a lot out of last month and enjoyed it very much, and I look forward to this opportunity to collaborate with everyone.
Awesome.
Where's Kurt?
Yeah, Kurt's silent today.
Yeah.
Oh, there he was. Kurt is here, and there's someone else too, so whoever else is out there and wants to jump in and introduce yourself, that would be great.
And J.A. Owens is going to just be listening in.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the format for today, for those of you, so Kurt and Tammy who were here last month, we have a shared document again, and that link is the second link I shared. The first one is an article on peer pressure games for some of my students. Sorry. But there is a link to a shared document, and that way we can kind of type some of our answers in so we, one, can see what we're thinking and talking about, and two, that we kind of have a hard copy digital record of our discussion. So we're going to start out.
Here's the link.
Towards the top of the, here, I'll tweet it out, or I'll do it again.
Yeah.
Right there.
Ah, thank you.
Yes. So the topic for this month has to do with relationships and writing in your classroom, and we came to that as I was reading the English Journal for this last month. Some articles about having trust and respect in your classroom, and that's kind of the starting point for this month's discussion. And one of the, and I had this at the top of that shared document, the quote that really stood out to me was, we have to respect the student, not for the product, not for the paper we call literature by giving it a grade, but for the search for truth in which he is engaged. We must listen carefully for those words that reveal a truth that may reveal a voice. Okay, so we're going to start out with just an opening prompt. And I want you to, you can type this directly in, and then we'll kind of discuss it. And if you just kind of change the font colors or somehow make sure that we know who you are when you're writing, and then you can kind of start typing your answer. I want you to think about what is one technique for teaching writing that you use successfully in your classroom, what's one way in which you struggle with teaching writing in your classroom, and then what would make the process of writing better and or easier.
All right. Okay. This is where we had so much fun last time writing in the document and reading everyone else's writing.
So we take just another minute or so, and then we can kind of talk about some of the things that we're doing well and some of the things with which we're struggling, and maybe give each other some feedback outside of some of the notes that everyone's giving. All right, and those of you who are still typing finish, would anyone like to kind of share some of their struggles and positives that they're doing with writing in their classroom? And I'll go at once. All right, well, so for me, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is conferencing with my students on their writing. It's a timely way to give feedback. You can give individualized feedback, but it also takes a lot of time. And right now I have about 30 kids in a class, and so that takes really a lot of time. So my struggle kind of goes hand in hand with the things that I like and celebrate. Is that I just feel like I need more time to be able to give valuable and timely feedback to my students.
Yeah, hi, Kurt. You know, and I think, oh, Bridget, I'm getting feedback, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. But I just think so. That's just one of the biggest struggles with writing in general, is just having the time to do those conferences, to do those revisions, to come in and, you know, you're, especially in a high school system, you're often limited by that bell system. You know, there's bells going off, and you have to be finished by the bell, and it's so hard to pull out that time to get that conferencing in. But yet, it's the most, you know, one of the most valuable moments for a student to learn how to write, and so we have to find the time to do that.
Okay, well, let's move on. So loud. Did anybody get a chance to read the articles that we've shared? One was called Nurturing Caring Relationships, and the other was Teachable Learning One-on-One. Okay, so I'm going to just move into that. First one talked about building, nurturing, and caring relationships between the student and the teacher, and that being the prime. So that starting quote that I put at the top of that 4A, caring relationships between the student and the teacher should be the prime goal of education. And once again, we're just going to kind of type our feedback and then hopefully share our feedback. What do you see as the positives of this statement, and what do you see as the negatives of this statement to start with? And then how do you create relationships with your student? And we kind of talked about this a little bit in the Montana Ed Chat last night, and the need for trust in the classroom and the need for the relationships in the classroom. So if you want to go into that share document again and kind of type what you're thinking in response to those questions, go. All right. Would anyone like to share some of the ideas and thoughts that they have about this? I do think that there are definitely positives and then different ways of thinking about this as well.
I just, I kind of come back to the thought that, first of all, it sort of goes with what we were saying a little bit, Bridget, with the time and that conferencing time, just sort of, having the time to build those relationships and having the time to build those conferencing relationships. I do feel like that is a prime goal of education, but I also feel like we're really trying to create lifelong learners. I mean, not to quote sort of a catchphrase there, but I feel like that fostering relationships is kind of a piece of that. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's so important, and it is a prime goal of what we do as educators, but it's also in order to foster this lifelong learning for students so that they enjoy, learning and getting an education and peace out. But, go on. That's sort of what my first thought was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. You're in, Kurt. I'm glad.
Can I jump in? Is it?
Yeah, go for it.
I agree completely that the relationships are really critical, and the ability to create a relationship that's trusting enough that you can actually provide feedback to learners that they then can take in, that they can hear. One of the caveats for me that is challenging is that I've watched a lot of young teachers, particularly coming onto the reservation to teach for the first time, who hold very low expectations for student performance, and they love the kids to death, but they're not fostering their growth. They're actually holding them down, and it's a form of oppression, to be honest. And so there's a balance between developing that trusting relationship and being able to actually have the very difficult conversations that provide feedback and avoiding the pitfalls and traps of codependence in the classroom.
Indeed. Indeed.
Tammy, that was really where I was trying to go, and I couldn't figure out how to phrase it in my comment, so I said, that balance between a professional relationship, but you put it much more eloquently than what I was trying to say. But that idea that you want to have a caring relationship, but it seems like it's kind of touch and go until you've developed it, and then you can kind of move into that next piece. But and again, I see it happening a lot with younger teachers and things like that, and I know I would include myself in that as well. But
well, the challenge is knowing the difference between de-stress and eustress. That when you hold a student to really high expectations, or in my case, my effort is always to have limitless expectations for the student. When you do that, you're producing for them a form of challenge that is eustress, but it is stress all the same. You don't want them in de-stress, but you absolutely never want to deny them the opportunity to experience that profound psychological breakthrough that happens when they overcome a really significant and thoughtful challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's connected to the other article as well, because Brown talked about the need for having trust so that students are willing to take those academic risks.
Yeah.
That if they don't trust your class, they don't trust you, and if they don't trust your classroom, then they're not going to take some of those academic risks.
Exactly.
Right.
Which should be what our goal is, to push them to that point of, distress, where they are uncomfortable.
Well, and that is when I look at Jennifer's comment up here, and I actually realized I was trying to talk earlier and I had muted myself, and so no one heard what I was trying to say. But when I look up here, and Jennifer's comment, and she said, at first I struggled with the believability of work on your own future, and then we look at examples of other kids that are doing their age, and so there's this idea, that she has of, she's building that relationship with students that they then try, that they understand that there is a struggle and that others struggle too, and building relationships is key to getting there, but yet also guiding that in that professional way, or in that way of high expectation, okay, I understand this is a struggle, but we're going to continue moving on down this path. We're not deviating off because life is tough. No, picture this and go forward, and here are some examples. And I think that kind of ties into a little bit what we were talking about too. Sorry, I had missed that comment earlier. No one heard me. I was talking to myself, I guess.
Right. So, and we can write this, and we can write it and talk it. How do you create then that balancing act relationship? So it's still a professional relationship, but it's that still trusting kind of mentor relationship with your student. If you want, you can type again, and then we can discuss it so you kind of have an idea of what you're thinking. You can just talk about it, because I agree with everything everyone said. I think there is such a fine line between hand-holding and being too close to them to see what they need. Yeah, or whether you're still a professional.
You know, and this is so, the creating relationships, again, gets harder as we maximize up that class size, right? Because each relationship is individual. And so, you know, sometimes I knew that students, I made some real inroads with students because I took the time to go after school to watch their soccer games. And that made such an impact on some of my students. Like, a teacher had never gone to see their soccer game. Like, that was, wow, you know, their coach, of course, watched, or an assistant coach who might teach in the school was there, but never did another teacher, you know, take the time out to go to a soccer game. And so for a handful of students over the years, that was a very powerful way of creating that relationship. And then in the class, they were so much more invigorated and more interested in hearing what I had to say, because I had shown that, you know, outside interest in them. And that's sort of a basic, simple one. But again, that wouldn't necessarily work for everyone, because not everyone's involved in sports or some other outside activity, but it works for some students. And so it's that idea of gauging what a student might need in order to gain that trust, or to show that you're open and receptive to what they have to say too.
Mm-hmm. And I think it doesn't always have to be a big thing either. Like, it can be that you talk to them and you say hi and you ask how they're doing, and then you have those conversations then about their academic stuff as well, and talk to them individually about what they're learning or what they're interested in or what they're struggling with or anything like that. It doesn't always have to be a life thing. It can be academically that you're connecting as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There we go.
The other part of that first article that we're talking about was talking about showing yourself as a learner in your classroom. And so how do you show yourself as a learner, as a fellow learner in your classroom?
I agree.
So I think we're all kind of riding along the same lines. We model, we make mistakes in front of our students.
I like
Tammy
Jennifer's try something new, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be okay that you're not going to know everything in front of your students.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's what Kurt talks a lot about, the modeling as well, and modeling with other texts and modeling with your own texts.
And students, that's nice. Yeah.
Kids have to be doing that kind of work because they're learning that too. They're learning that it's okay to not know everything.
Well, and I like the idea that Kurt has here of, letting them know ahead of time so they can, read their work and sort of be prepared, and putting those students into that sort of teacher role too, that we then learn from them. I mean, I think it's a really nice, powerful practice.
And moving on to that last question for this article, what factors inhibit you from creating genuine relationships in your classroom? Tammy, that's nice.
It's true.
Oh.
Yay.
I am totally agreeing with this. Sometimes it's knowing too much institutional history and also the lack of institutional history.
Kurt, I love your comment about inhibitions and a fear about controlling the discussion too much. I sometimes want to jump in and fill the silences and give kids the answers or take control, and I think it's hard to get back sometimes.
Christy, is it on your screen that you have the article instead of the discussion?
Yep, I'll flip back.
Yeah, if you go back to just because not everybody can get into this.
Thank you. Chat. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure which would be more helpful. Is that better?
I'm going to send you the document through your email.
Bridget, I did that. I don't know if it's not going or... But I shared it to his email. I don't know.
right. Would anyone like to add anything about this? I think we are all fairly on the same page on what holds us back, and everything from grades to institutional history, turnover, teacher turnover, student turnover, class size, time constraints. Would anyone like to add anything about that or elaborate on anything that they've written and shared? Okay, then let's move on to the other article that we had for today. So I think if we just talk about it in general, and I'm going to go and talk about kind of that idea of building trust with your students so they're willing to take risks in writing and discussion. And so that's question C on the document. How do you build trust so that your students are willing to take risks in writing and discussions? And I think this goes back to the conversation that we're having already about relationship building, but I think even more than relationship building, how do you build that trust so that you're able to get the most out of your students that you can, so that they try things they haven't tried before, so that they think things they haven't thought before. How do you think that can happen? Within all of the constraints that we face, that we all just wrote about. So for me, this question goes back to a couple of things that we've talked about. Building genuine relationships with students to help overcome bias, as you talk about, Tammy. And then I loved the quote that Kurt shared about empathy builds on self-awareness. The more open we are to our own emotions, the more skilled we will be in reading feelings. But I think if we have empathy towards our students and are aware of our own place in everything, that we both model that power to our students, the power of empathy, and we also enable them to succeed in our classrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, yes.
Would anyone else share?
I was just going to say, I like the idea of building the relationships and understanding the inner relationships of not only, member to member in the classroom, teacher to student in the classroom, but other relationships within the school as well, and bringing that forward into a more cognitive awareness for students, I think is key also. Yeah.
All right. Well, if no one else has anything else, we do all have access to this document, so you can go back and look at what everyone typed, because there is a lot of information in there that's fantastic. And I like what you discuss about never a final draft. When we're writing, I call everything a working draft, so everything's always a work in progress. And I do believe that you have to build a professional relationship where you show empathy towards your students so that you can move away from that bias.
Yeah.
And push. Okay. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this session of the Montana Writing Professional Learning Network, and I believe April 13th will be our next.
Yes, that will be 3:45, so I hope everyone can be there. Does anyone have any, Bridget, do we have any topic identified for next time? I know we had sort of...
I was brainstorming things, but is there anything that any of you would like to talk about next time? I'm more than willing, we're more than willing to take any topics and figure out how to run with them.
Wow. Think about that. I might be emailing you.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
We'll let everyone know. Yeah, we will let everyone know what next month's topic is. And I appreciate everyone's attendance and participation. And bring a friend next time.
Absolutely.
You're here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everyone. I'll stop.